Welcome. Well. I was in the bathtub, and when I got out, the prison guards had to spray me down with that quarantine spray, and then I had to hold my junk, and they had to do that prison powdered donut puff that they put on you, where they puff you with all the prison powdered donut dust. So now I'm all squeaky clean for y'all, and we're going to be a little more serious. We're not going to be totally serious. We're going to enjoy our discussion as much as we can. This is, of course, obviously to a degree a serious topic. I don't think we need to be thinking irrationally. So let's keep our level-headedness here. Let's look at the articles. We're going to do, this will probably be a pretty lengthy stream. I'm going to do my overview of the big picture, going back, looking at the information from when the news was reporting on this initially. I'm not going to speculate too much. We're going to look at the different perspectives. We're going to analyze each one, each narrative and explanation and theory as best I can, talking in a way that is safe. This is a safe space. So I got my big old jug of coffee. I got my big old thing of water. And I've had so many requests. People have said so many, like, please help us understand what's going on. I'm going to give you my opinion. I'm not any kind of medical person, right? I'm a guy trained in philosophy. I'm also not your spiritual father. I'm not a spiritual guide. I can do apologetics, and I can point you to people who are spiritual guides and spiritual fathers in the Orthodox Church. But I'm not a cult leader. I'm not a guru. I'm not a medical person. But I can do a little bit of geopolitical analysis. So we're going to be looking at some of that today. We're going to be looking at notions that are maybe foreign to some people, but we're going to look at this from the angle that nobody has really touched on yet. Everybody has kind of been going news to news to news to news story, but not zooming out. And as you know, we always kind of give you the bird's eye view here at Jay's Analysis. Now, we will be looking at some of the zoom in issues today. But let's start with the mindset, right? One of the things that we've covered in my book series, which you guys I'm sure are familiar with, the elite writings of the last 100 plus years, is the philosophy of human control, right? How to run society, how to govern society, the secrets of statecraft, so to speak. And after the Enlightenment, after the French Revolution, a new idea arose, which is scientific governance and scientific control. Now, the idea of techne, or technocracy, technocracy goes back to, obviously, the ancient world, to Plato. We've discussed this many times. This comes up in the ancient Greeks in their phraseology of techne and quantification. But as you have with the revolutions in the West in the 16, 17, 1800s, you get revolutions in all areas of life. And this leads to the notion of scientism, right? I'm not against science. Definitely science has its place. Everybody should recognize that obviously we have to do science when we analyze the natural world. But the mindset of world as laboratory, this is a great book. And thank you to John and Chris who recommended this in the past. The Rebecca Lemov book, World as Laboratory, is a great picture of the 20th century's mindset of looking at everything as lab experiment. In fact, what did Neil deGrasse McTyson say the other day? We're living through a big experiment. And we've covered this many times over from the most elite families and their writings. We've covered Bertrand Russell when he discussed World War I, World War II, Cold War as experiments. Now, I don't want to reduce that and oversimplify and say everything is a giant experiment and we're all Jim Carrey in the Truman Show. I'm not saying that. There is a ring of truth to that, though, because reality is complex. It's multi-layered. So we can't smush everything into one kind of example. Now, a long time ago, I sat and I read this in one day. and I did a full-on analysis of Machiavelli's Art of War. Now, if you don't know, Machiavelli wrote an Art of War just like Sun Tzu did. Right? Sun Tzu wrote Art of War many, many, many years ago. Everybody's familiar with Art of War, and he says, "Oh, the majority of warfare is in the mind." That's true, but not a lot of people know that Book 6 of Machiavelli's most famous treatise on the battlefield, which is essentially setting the stage for understanding of modern warfare. Machiavelli's book is full of tricks, fake flags, and all kinds of subterfuge in Book 6. So if you read Book 6, he will tell you all the different techniques, tricks, tactics, scams, psychological operations that can be done upon a target population. Their multitude, and you might think, we have this tendency to think, oh, the ancient world, they were a bunch of dum-dums. Like they were unsophisticated in the ancient world. They didn't really know how to understand that kind of stuff, right? But we have science now. Well, they had science then, but they didn't call it science, right? So it was just known as statecraft, you could say. And you could go all the way back to the ancient world, right? To the dynasties of the ancient empires. They understood this kind of stuff too. In fact, the origins of statecraft, you could argue, comes out of, and espionage comes out of the empires. I'm presently reading Dvornik's very rare book on the history of intelligence agencies back in the ancient world and up into the Byzantine period. But suffice to say that let's give some examples of things that Machiavelli talks about are normative for wartime disinformation, psychological warfare, fear tactics. Use big ceremonies and religious pageants to trick the enemy. So in other words, you could have like big displays of things that not just trick the enemy, but also perhaps mobilize your population, right? Keep women away from your soldiers. Women will have the tendency to distract the boys. You know what I'm saying? So keep them ETHOTs away. Tell the enemy that he has spies and moles amongst his people, right? So send information that will disrupt the enemy, make them think that they've got a bunch of spies. Uh-oh, cough. Uh-oh, everybody's freaking out. No, I have seasonal allergies, by the way, so I do not have carunka. Give suspected spies disinformation to test to see if they spread the disinformation to the enemy. Give fake attendance. Have false defectors from the enemy. Use prisoners of war. Use fake letters. Bait the enemy. Use a gambit. Use diversions. Use animals as deception. They even talk about tricks and techniques to put torches on the backs of animals and let them run through fields and this kind of stuff. I think Samson does that too, doesn't he? Divide the enemy. Psychological warfare is chiefly designed to split the enemy's mind, have them in panic, fear, and then to basically capitulate. So they mentally collapse. And most warfare, as we know, is mental. Try to spread jealousy amongst the elites of the opposing enemy. Offer up pawn sacrifices, as we said, gambits. Not just, gambit doesn't necessarily have to be a pawn sacrifice, but so you get on and on and on. You can fake like you're retreating, like the enemy has won. You can engage in techniques of BIO. Yes, back then, right? Poisoning the well. We know this as a fallacy, but back then, right? Try to BO, body odor, attack the enemy's water supply. False desertions, false defectors, again, comes up again. Let's see what else. Try to cause the enemy to feel that he's losing, but this is an interesting tactic that's discussed. Don't let the enemy despair, because if the enemy feels like they're despairing, they will actually fight harder. Of course, we utilize a lot of propaganda, he says, et cetera, et cetera. Let's see what else. All right. So a lot of techniques, tactics like this. I have a whole essay on this book if you want to go read my long essay, Jay's analysis on Machiavelli's Art of War. So with those two books, what we have in mind, and I would also add too, let's not forget Thomas Kuhn's Structures of Scientific Revolution, because Kuhn, of course, shows us that scientific revolutions happen in paradigms, and that they are not met with everybody just going and sitting down and looking at the data. And if Lady Justice with her scales has the most brute facts in one side of the scale, then we'll go with that. That's not how things happen, right? That's not the real world. The real world is much more complex, and scientific revolutions are met with intense amounts of opposition. So let's keep all of that in mind. Now, the next thing we'll talk about is the sections of the book talk that we've done, the 40 plus lectures in the last few years, where Fritjof Capra, Jacques Attali, Bertrand Russell, David Rockefeller, pretty much most of the people who are the hardcore technocrats. I think Brzezinski, at least in one place. And then we've got other examples of situations like the analyses of the Tavistock Institute, right? So one of the means by which the new world will be brought into being that most people overlook is medicine. There's a whole book on this by Nancy Banks that's good, where she discusses this. And if you've not heard, I know you guys probably heard me talk about it, but the Dr. Day tapes, right? The Dr. Day tapes also confirm all of that angle of this, right? So when we think of the new world that's coming into being, we think, oh, government and people, government guys and with smoky rooms and cigars, right? But actually, let's not miss the forest for the, however that goes. Let's not miss the trees for the forest for the, yeah, you know what I mean? Because it's actually medicine that is a key way to bring this in, as the Dr. Day tapes discuss, because Dr. Day was the head of one of the big Rockefeller institutions. You can go look up which one that was. And he laid out the entire plan of what we're seeing right now back in the late 60s. You also remember, if you've read Esoteric Hollywood 1, you know that I cite the 1968-69 CIA conference on mind control in San Francisco, which was attended by Dr. Holger Heiden. And you also know that we've touched on we actually did a whole analysis of the full Arthur Koestler book, Ghost in the Machine. And Ghost in the Machine at the end quotes Dr. Holger Heiden about the medical angle of this. So I have a unique bird's eye perspective from all this. I also recently, I'm not going to name the person, but I have tutored a pretty high up person. This is a think tank level person. And again, I'm not going to name them. And so he said to me, how do you have all this knowledge? And I said, what do you mean? He said, did you study this? I said, no. He said, what did you study? I said, I studied philosophy. He said, how do you know this geopolitical stuff? And to be fair, he thought I was a little too tinfoily, right? So he wasn't saying that he thought everything I was saying was correct per se, but he was like, how do you know all this? I said, because I went and I read, well, it's more than 40, but I've only done 40 plus talks on the elite books of the last century. And he intimated that something might happen in the coming months. Now, this tutoring was 8 months ago. So he did mention something might happen. He didn't say, it wasn't sensationalistic. It was just more of a situation where, based on probably existing models, right? I mean, that's what we're going to look at here, is that, so we have multiple war-gamed scenarios for the kinds of things that rolled out now, that we're seeing now, right? There's so much information. I've got so I've tracked, not just obviously I've followed the global elite book stuff for a long time, but when it comes to this stuff with Carunka, I followed this intently since January, because it was all over, media since January. We didn't really know where things were going, back then. It looked like it was confined to, the region of China. And so everybody was it was on people's back burners, right? Because, mainstream media touched on it here. They named it this and that, the woo, right? And then now that's been changed, by the way. But some of the alternative media outlets and the ones that are a little more reliable were calling attention to this. Medicare was doing streams early on with this, calling a lot of attention to it. And he was predicting, a pretty big scale situation. So we have to give Medicare props. Zero Hedge has been pretty accurate in the stuff that they have put out. So I saw back a long time ago when this was happening, and what we saw early on with Twitter was a lot of these leaks of videos of things that can't be confirmed. Okay, so I never talked about this because I just don't know what those videos all are. Some of those videos look to be pretty easily debunked, right? Like the one where you had fireworks going off and, this is like people are being taken out. Other videos appeared to show the possibility that could be the case. So we have to be careful, first of all, as one of the great memes pointed out this last week, that we don't fall into the dialectical trap that I see a lot of people falling into. Because this is not a situation of the people of China versus the people of America, MAGA, blah, 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 right? And I think this meme encapsulates this issue very well. Yes, my pretties. Yes, my precious. Right? So, collusion versus woo attack. Okay? Yeah. Let's not fall into that, because we know that, for example, the rise of China as a global economic power was actually planned a long time ago. Many books have been written about this. If you're a low IQ libertarian and you think that this occurred because of somebody just pulling themselves up by their bootstraps, I'm sorry, I can't help you. There are many, many books that talked about how this occurred, especially with places like Walmarts, through the aid of government setting up those and basically big scale Royal Society NGO type entities helping those that slave labor and whatnot be set up. So this has been done on purpose. And in fact, we covered in the Globalism Books Talks many of the elite who a long time ago, 100 years ago, were planning how you could integrate the world into a global setting. And then you could have a much easier way to control things, because you couldn't break free from, your region couldn't break free because you're interdependent upon other areas. Now, some people say, that's just the natural workings of capitalism. And no, it's not. This is actually pretty well planned. Now, that doesn't mean that at the layers and levels of the pyramid, there aren't real dialectics and real competition. There are. But that's largely what fools a lot of people. And also, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that everything is controlled. I'm not saying that everything is completely, totally planned. I don't believe that. That's way oversimplified. So let's talk about this. So I don't know personally what to do with this. I don't have any specific opinion. This is data that we're going to look at that has been going around. There was the 2015 Nature article. And so that one's not coming up. That's the 2017. So they actually issued a statement about this. This is 2015. I can't think. This is it, I think. So here's the actual research paper on it. So again, I'm only going to be posting things that are in the public domain. I don't have any private information. I don't have any secret info from high-level people. The only person that I talked to didn't say anything like this. So this is my own, just looking at the public information that I've tracked for a long time now. So we see that there is a paper of this kind of thing back in 2015. And I think this is what the Nature article is referencing. Okay. So there's that. There's other examples of this as well that you can look up. And there are, I'm sure, many, many papers that deal with how there could have been these kinds of things. This led to other websites speculating about ACE2 receptors. Now, again, I don't have any particular opinion on this. I'm telling you what kinds of papers are out there and what they say. And they make the argument that ACE2 receptors suggest an alteration that could have made this more susceptible to larger areas of populations. You can make of that what you will. Again, I don't have knowledge of virology or anything like that. I'm just looking at the information that's out there. So that could fit different people's theories too, right? Because I'm going to be very careful about how I word this one. So you can find at the State Department websites, at the statedepartment.gov, an arrest that was made of Dr. L from Harvard, and this related to information and things being transferred, ideas and information. Snopes then attempted to, quote, fix this, and they didn't even realize that the mainstream BBC articles from January still contain the facts that Dr. L was absolutely connected to the lab there, you see. So now, again, I'm not saying that this proves that all of what we are seeing is totally 100% to be believed. We're going to run through different people's takes and different people's scenarios. I'm not telling you which one is correct. You can make that decision. I'm going to give you my take of like percentile. Like, I think that one's, we could say throw one theory in the totally discard bin. We could throw another theory into the possible bin. We could throw another theory into the more likely bin, right? I think that people are getting sick. I think it's also being hyped. That's my take right now. That's my personal opinion. But really, if you follow my work, you know that this kind of stuff is not really about the immediate event. Okay, so let's look at the next piece of evidence here, because we have that. Now, there's a website that I am skeptical of this website because it seems to be very one-sided. And it makes a case for a one-sided usage of this thing. I'm hesitant to even link the website. I don't know if I should. Well, I'll give you my analysis. So I don't know who runs this site. I haven't followed or looked too deeply into it, but there's a website called Great Game India. This is a anti-China, pro-West website, which I'm skeptical. And that doesn't mean, by the way, that I'm going to tell you that everything that the Chinese Communist Party says is true. I'm not buying into either side of this because I believe that these kinds of things occur at a higher level than national governments. And this is precisely why a lot of this stuff is so effective and people can't see through the haze to figure out what's going on. So there they had been tracking the arrests and this kinds of stuff for many, many months. I read many, many articles there. I read long articles that they had done on this there. And I think that part of that information is right, except that how am I supposed to immediately just believe that, oh, this was all the fault of, this shady foreign government over there, while we've got people here that do the same stuff, and our universities, are butt buddies with the universities in Wuhan. I mean, come on, really? And I'm sure everybody has seen Daily Mail, right? Again, this is just one. Cough, panic, I coughed. Everything is carunka. Everything. Right now, I'm sure everybody saw the Daily Mail. And this is seems to be accurate. So again, I'm just reporting the mainstream media here. Can't call me out on this. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not saying which one's right. We all remember this, right? Now, who actually believes that the heads of the CCP and the heads of the U.S. elite are at the top level really, really enemies. There is a degree of competition. There is a degree of trade war and this kind of stuff that has been going on under the Trump administration that's real. Not denying that. I'm not being overly tinfoily here. But at the same time, if you have that bigger perspective, then you know that many, Kissinger,
we know that this would be the China century, the next century will be the great China century.
So there's a degree of companies that have Americanist interests, you could say, right? We see this in the Project for a New American Century, where we have the outlining of a kind of neoconservative model of global approach, and then you have more of this UN, Brzezinski model. Now, I don't think at the tip top, as we've looked at people like Brzezinski really in depth, we looked at almost all of his works. Is he really out of step with the neoconservative? Not so much, not really. Some people even argue, like Golden Fitzgerald, that Brzezinski basically is a neoconservative. I don't really care. Point is that you do kind of have these two models of how to approach things with a directly global, more of a UN approach, or do we want like a American corporate approach? And then, of course, you've got kind of the big banks that sit, atop of this, right? That are more or less running this whole technocratic scheme. So, with keeping with all of that in mind, and of course, if you follow this rabbit trail of the spies and all that stuff, and the Dr. L and all that, you're going to get lost and all that. But suffice to say that it is verified on the State Department's website. So you can't nobody can call that a conspiracy theory. It's there on the website. The arrest, and then there's the there is the situation of this kind of long-term Cold War trade war with China. Now, again, that doesn't mean that I'm saying that at the top there's not friendship, so to speak. But there is a degree of opposition and dialectics here. So let's move on to next. I want to talk about, so we talked about the papers. We talked about the espionage aspect of this, which I think is inconclusive. But if we have these level 4 places all over the U.S., and they're all over most countries. I mean, don't most countries have this? Didn't the U.S. just build a giant one somewhere in the Eastern Bloc? Somewhere? Serbia or something? I don't know. Not Serbia, but I don't know. Croatia or somewhere. They just built some big giant thing. And Patrick did some good analysis of this with Diliana, who uncovered some of that relating to that bio stuff there. So I don't know if this could connect. It could. So I would look to Diliana on that. By the way, thank you. We got a big audience here. I think it's my biggest live audience for just me. 650. Welcome, everybody. We are doing a mainstream media analysis of the Carunka. And we are only going from the mainstream, what's public, and what my opinions are. So, let's see. We covered that. Let's talk about this next document that is relevant, which is the... Let's see. I sent it to my messages here. Everybody be sure, if you would, hit smash like if you're enjoying this information as we recap, and if you would share, and feel free to support with super chats. Obviously I will be limited in the way that I answer. I'm not going to answer everything with... we have to be careful here. Right? All right. Stupid thing's not working. Here we go. Now, this is a curious document. This is a Rockefeller warning paper, white paper, May 2010. And let's see. Trying to get my search to work here. So this is called lockstep, and this is very relevant. And this talks about coordinating top down during these kinds of situations. May 2010. Now, again, these are all public documents, right? I'm not theorizing. These are public documents. And it's basically wargaming kind of what would happen in situations where we saw this kind of stuff. And this is if you looked at a lot of white papers, which I have over the years, and a lot of policy papers, this is typical kind of stuff that you see. I'll put it in the chat there. And it outlines all the different ways that this could be approached, and that's lockstep. So that one's relevant all the way back to 2010. Now, keep in mind, too, that one thing that we've covered ad nauseum at my outlets is the influence of movies and Hollywood. And Hollywood and movies and film and documentaries don't just function to entertain us. They also function to prepare, to propagandize, and to psyop, right? They also have an esoteric aspect, if we believe that, many of the filmmakers believe in esoteric and mystical philosophies, which many of them do. Not all of them, but many of them do. So you can get my books that discuss that. But when it comes to the way that films prepare us, this is the reason why. I get this question all the time. It should be pretty obvious, but maybe it's just because I've studied this so long. I did my grad work on this. Why are we seeing things in movies that happen 10, 15 years later? Why in Contagion, the movie Contagion, did they mention social distancing? Why in films like Virus? Why in films like Outbreak, right, that I just covered in that joke stream the other night? Why do we see all these kinds of things? Well, because films have the ability to prepare the public, and they enter into the mass mind, right? So it's an easier way to prepare people for what's coming. Now, it's not an infallible way to predict the future. I've never said any kind of nonsense like that. I'm not schizophrenic. I don't look at the numbers in the movies to get my boomer decoder ring out and do a QAnon thing. No, we don't do that. We do sometimes look at numerology, because we have had the head of the IMF, Christine Lagarde, actually give a public lecture about numerology in relationship to global economy. So it is relevant, but to plug everybody's names into a bunch of gematria calculators is nothing but retardo. So we don't do that nonsense here. So we have that important document there. Lockdown, and the lockstep with lockdown. All right, now I know everybody's heard of this because it's been going around, and I've watched 2 of these today, and I was kind of shocked, not because of it having a lot of pertinent information, but I was shocked because of how accurate this exercise was. So I'm sure most of you probably have heard of Event 2.0, right? And if you go watch the videos on this, which I have now, I haven't seen them all. There's a whole bunch of them. I was like, whoa. Everything that we're seeing was basically wargamed. By the way, this is going to play into the nonsense that Trump did the other day, where he pulled a Condoleezza. We had no idea anything like this could ever happen. We had no idea. We didn't know. Nobody thought, right? It's just like the 9 event, right? We had no idea that anything like this could even though they have like multiple war game scenarios that are the exact scenario. Now, why is this relevant? Okay, so Event 201 is the Gil Bates Foundation in concord with Davos and the World Economic Forum. By the way, I covered Davos. I wasn't there at Davos. I wasn't snow skiing with Kevin Spacey and snorting the coke off of the butts of the strippers, but I covered it in the sense of doing videos on Davos, I think a couple years ago. So you can go watch my Davos analyses, because I talked about this stuff. I talked about technocracy and this kind of stuff, right? So anyway, in the event 2.0 ONE, what we see is, so I'm looking at my notes. I took notes on this event. Now, there's a whole bunch of these. I haven't watched all the videos. It's really cheesy too, because they have that, like, all these people are wargaming this out, and they have these silly news clips with a bunch of like B actors and stuff. So it's goofy. But then again, if you watched Contagion, then you saw Sanjay Gupta in Contagion as an actor doing his lines, which we just saw people in real life, CNN, like the other day. Sanjay Gupta was like saying stuff that Lawrence Fishburne says in the movie. So in event 2ONE, they say that this is a respiratory pneumonia issue, and it has a 10% rate of mortus. Really? Wow. They say that there will be shortages. They say that the masks, we won't have enough masks. They say, like, everything in this, okay? They even had to issue a statement on their website, statement about our exercise. It says in October 2019, John Hopkins, together with World Economic Forum, Davos, Gil Bates, we did this outbreak test run. However, we did not make any predictions. The scenario was a model of a fictional pandemic. We explicitly state that it was not a prediction, even though it's like point by point, right? Like what's happening. Now, to be fair, this scenario was very extreme. Okay, so it predicts 65 million. This tabletop exercise will include a mock and novel CV, Carunka. But it says the potential impact of the fictional virus CV are not similar to Carunka. Now, I don't know when they put that update up, but did you see what Cuomo said today? Because what Cuomo said today was exactly what that says, right? So I don't buy that. You can make of that what you will. Then what was really wild about this event 2ONE was that if you watch the part 3 where they talk about the economy, so they go into a lengthy discussion of the economy, what will happen, which is pretty wild. But again, their scenario is very radical in their war games exercise there. And they say that there will be, basically the need in order to restore giant sums pumped in. And then there will be this, just like with Lockstep, there will be the need for coordinating international groups to reconsolidate after the event. That is the biggest. So in the immediate, right, not the long 50-term plan, in the immediate, that's the biggest part of this, is that the economic, because this allows at multiple layers and levels consolidation, bailout, getting rid of a lot of mom and pops, big box stores, through public-private partnerships with select groups. And so when we have the recovery, whenever that is, the economic boom that will come after, that will be a period of consolidation. There will be tremendous profits as a result of this consolidation. Hence why people were starting to dump their stocks. These GOP crony slime balls that were dumping their stocks. Exactly. Okay, so let's pause for a minute, rewind, and think again about the big picture. Are we familiar with Bill Joy? Are we familiar with the famous essay, Why the Future Doesn't Need Us, right? Sun Microsystems. I'm not going to screenshot that. You can go find that. So the attitude of the technocrats is very well exemplified in this essay, where he calls attention to this and says, hey, we need to have a discussion about technocracy and about where we're going and the idea of a essentially post-human future. So that's called attention to in Why the Future Doesn't Need Us. That's very important to keep in mind here. all the globalism books talks that we've done cover that. That shouldn't even be in question. But we oftentimes forget that essay, Why the Future Doesn't Need Us. Next, we want to keep in mind the MIT paper. Okay, so this is the next document that's going to be most important that Melissa called attention to. So thank you to Melissa for pointing this one out. No, every time I cough because of my seasonal allergies, people are going to be like, he's coughing, he's got carunka. So the MIT article, why we're not going back to normal. I'm tempted to read the whole article. I don't know if I'll lose everybody's attention because this is pretty important. We are all the way up to 700. Welcome everybody. This is Jay Dyer from Jay's Analysis. Thank you for joining me here as we do a mainstream analysis of this event. So right now we're going to be we're looking at all the important papers, white papers, events, and exercises that relate to this, the news, the big picture. So this talks about, now again, remember, social distancing was mentioned in Contagion, right? So this is an idea that's been in the social engineering plans for a long time. That absolutely fits into the longer scale plan of where they want to take us. Jacques Attalie's whole book discusses this, Brief History of the Future. Go listen to my lecture on Attalie's Brief History of the Future, because he told us in 2006. Now, I don't remember if he mentions off the top of my head this kind of event. He may mention these kinds of events. Somebody can look in the index and see. But what he mentions is that the nomadic devices will produce a society that's alienated, and then the gig economy will give way to the new economy, you see. So we've already seen people mentioning this in the mainstream news. Oh, the gig economy is going away. Time for the new economy. And so your nomadic devices will keep you now at home. Now, keep in mind, this is a phase, right? So the period of being under lockdown, we got your city on lockdown. That's not forever. We're not going to be forever in lockdown. That's crazy. That's fear-mongering. There's a lot of sensationalism and fear-mongering here. Let's not lose our minds. This is not the end of the world. This is a lot of media hype. So let's not get caught up in media hype. The media is loving to hype this. And by the way, so are some of these governors, because once they hype it, they get immediate access to huge cash grab. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that there's not real problems and threats. Okay. I'm not giving my opinions on those things. I'm going to give you my analysis, and as we said, we will place things into the percentage bins of which ones are more or less likely. We're not going back to normal. Social distancing is here to stay, and it will stay for more than just a couple weeks. It will upend and change our entire way of life. To stop this carunka, we need to revolutionize how we do everything. Work, exercise, social life, shopping, health, education, taking care of family members, blah, 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 blah. And right away, we need to flatten the curve. Flattening the curve is the buzzword that is going around everywhere now, and this is part of the herd immunity theory. Herd immunity theory, according to one of the British elites, Sir Vincent whoever, he says everybody, or most of Britain, needs to get carunka. I'm not kidding. He says that. And he says this will produce the herd immunity. Now, herd immunity is a theory, so you can make of that what you will. But it's very interesting because that seems to fit very well with the attitude of the Royal Society, does it not? And I'm talking about Malthusianism. Now, I don't think that carunka is going to. It's not the end of the world, and it's not. There's a recovery rate that's very high because we also don't know to what degree. We had a scientist on last night, Infidel Pharaoh, and he was explaining on Boiler Room the tests and the degree of accuracy, and how this is basically they do the tests and it's by signature, right? So you have this, and this signifies that you probably have it. That was his explanation. That's the most easiest scientist that we have access to. And that's how he described the test. So the test could or could not be that accurate, but the problem is that, so if you look at the media is all over the place. Like, oh, the tests they're fine. Oh, we've got all these tests rolling out. Oh, and this, and oh, but they're totally inaccurate. Oh, but they're good. But they're. I mean, it's you can't figure out what is accurate with the test stuff. So I don't. I mean, again, I don't trust government numbers and stats and all that. I just look at what they say, and I don't say that it's true or false. I just look at what they say and what it is. So when we look at the Carunka numbers, that's the numbers that they're going to go by, right? Worldometer, I think it jumped up like 40K from yesterday to today. I don't know what it's at right now, but I mean, these are the kind of public stats they're going to. Yeah, so it went up like 35K, and they're reporting. I'm not saying that I know what's true or false. I'm just saying what the public stats are reporting is a 13% rate of mortus. So, but there's also a high recovery rate, you see. But now they're putting out these stories about how the young people supposedly are flopping over. Again, this is just what they're saying. And it's just very difficult through this like fog and haze of like infinite news stories to find out, what's accurate. So we're not going to make build big cases on this or that news story because we know the news is less than reliable often. So then the author of Why We're Not Going Back to Normal moves on to say, it's time for the new economy. It's time for big data to come in. This is another angle that a lot of people missed. Big data needs to come in and track everything so that we can figure out who's properly social distancing and who is coming in contact with who. Did you have unprotected bumping of uglies with somebody who had Carunka 6 months ago now, right? This kind of stuff. I'm not joking, right? We could be sequestered up to 18 months, he says. But this 18 months is not enough because after 18 months, we're going to realize that we needed more. We needed to expand. Researchers' models suggest that social distancing is a good strategy, but we're going to have to not just do a period of social distancing. He says we're going to have to we're going to have to change everything. Now, if you remember, go back and listen to my Jacques Attali talk. He wrote a whole book in 2006 about this. Not about the event, but about social distancing, nomadic devices causing the alienation, which would lead to people being alienated and doing everything in their home. And he says something like, I don't remember if it's 2030, I think it's 2050, he says, when it's all in place. He says, you'll have a little trash can R2D2 bot that'll roll around your house and it will do everything with you. I'm not joking, this is what he says. I don't know if this is going to happen, but he says that the little R2D2 buddy that you have, you'll probably be bumping uglies with that little R2D2, by the way, because you can't, your interactions may be limited. I don't know, but he says that everything through your little R2D2 unit will be the mirror through which you will see the whole world. So when you go to school, you're going to go to school with your little roll around Robo Buddy in your house. Now you might think, well, that sounds like you don't believe in that everybody's going to be able to congregate. No. There's phases to these things. So my personal opinion is that there's this is not going to last forever. You will congregate with people. However, in the smart cities, the models are going to be not just everything tracked and traced, but I think they're going to have individuals being isolated, but then the communal times will be a time of like sharing, right? And I think we're already seeing this with places that are rolling out like the gentrified areas. It's like you live over a Target, you live over a Walmart, you live over a Whole Foods. We're going to live in Walmarts, folks. I'm telling you, we're going to live in Walmarts. You'll go downstairs to the area, and there'll be a giant trough. Like, you're the cattle. You can come to the trough, pig boy. Feed at the trough, pig boy. And that's your communal time. Everybody will have communal Walmart time. Wonderful savings. I'm not joking, bro. So then you'll go back up when it's class time. The bell rings.
Class time. Head back up to your domicile to be alone and to be instructed and to bump uglies with your R2D2 personal units.
That's what's going to happen. That's the model that Attali outlines. Who's Jacques Attali? We talk about. He's the Kissinger of France. Okay, he's the top elitist technocrat dude of France. He says, so then they talk about living in the state of a pandemic. This article, what's going to be like. All right, let's move on down. He says, so what will need to happen is that's 2050 I was talking about. Let's rewind, come back to the now. So the MIT article says that we will see harbingers of what we'll experience in the next few years through the usage of the cell phone data, all being tracking and tracing. Singapore, it says, is a model for doing this. And everything, all the people that you interact with and come in contact with is going to have to be essentially watched and stored. So again, this is now big data, right? Don't forget world economy, right? Now big data is in on this. Remember, I just told you how many of the box stores are going to be able to cash in on this event, and however long we're in lockdown. I guarantee you they have it modeled to know how long of a lockdown will shut down more of the local moms and pops. I guarantee you. By the way, the Events 2.0 ONE actually discusses the international bodies just basically consolidating as a result of Event 2.0 ONE. So then basically this article says that anytime you want to go do your funds and get your koofies, your kumis, you're going to have to show proof of immunity. You're going to have all your identification verification on your little personal device or whatever. And it's going to have to, you're going to have to show.
Let's papers, please. Your papers, please.
This kind of a thing. We'll all have to adopt these measures. It's going to be so obvious. Then he goes talk about the gig economy. This will mean you don't get a gig economy job. You're not going to be doing a yoga instruction. You're not going to be doing hot yoga, touching butts. No more. You're not going to be smacking spandex yoga pants anymore. All you Bikram. If you watch the Bikram documentary, that's what I'm talking about. Interesting about this, though, is that he says that migrant workers will have a tougher time getting in. So ironically, this is posing a problem for the notion of there not being border restrictions. However, that's only in the here and the now. So don't be mistaken into thinking, oh yeah, we got it, MAGA. We're going to get that border wall now, MAGA. Yeah, right. I hear people are acting like this is going to bring down the New World Order. Are you serious? What? It was literally like the dumbest low IQ take I've ever heard. Oh, but like, if you read all the Q codes with your boomerang, right? Give me a break. Yeah. So, everything that we've said about the Techne agenda is outlined there in that paper. All right, what's next on the list here? Future Doesn't Need Us, MIT paper, Rockefeller. We did that. Let's see more. Nature article, ACE2 receptors. We did that. Now, next thing that didn't make sense to me. Oh, we don't have any of the tests. Oh, but by the way, every one of these celebrity douchebags has had the test. What? Yeah, I don't know what's going on there, but skeptical flag raised here. Okay. Aaron, our good friend Aaron Dykes, made a good prediction. He said, get ready for some celebs to have a big event with this. and that will be another sort of catalyst for the public mind. So I think he's correct about that. Now, rewind to the cruise ships. I just, to me, something seemed weird about this. I don't really have any like hard fact about it. It's just that, like, if you followed our analyses for a long time, we've covered kind of bizarre things to do with the cruise ships for a long time. Again, I don't have any hard facts, just speculation. I wonder if cruise ships don't engage in shady things at times, in my opinion. We have seen some news stories about some very bizarre, shady things in relationship to cruise ships. So I'm not saying that they weren't on, they were on lockdown, but they had tests ready for the people on cruise ships, I guess. Interesting. Now, again, everybody knows about ID 2020, I think, by now. I'm not going to rehearse all that. You can easily go find those documents. That relates to what we just read in the We're Not Going Back to Normal article from MIT. Again, this is all public information. Nothing I'm covering here is not in some mainstream article or just public white papers. UBI and Yang. Now, that was weird to see Yang up there saying, ready for your universal basic income, here it comes. How long have I told you that's a trap? The IRS says, yeah, but dog, they've been stealing from me. I know they've been stealing. I pay taxes, dude. You know how much money I pay in taxes? Shit. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. The amount of money I pay in taxes, dog. So the UBI is the thing to get you used to getting your government cheese. Do you deserve more than a $2,000 check? It's gonna be great. Give me one for $2,000. Everybody's gonna love it. Yeah, it's a hanging of a piece of bait, piece of meat. Oh, come get it. Big Daddy State's gonna give you your meat, and then once you take it, you're on the dole. And it ties in exactly with what I just said about we're not going back to normal. Now, do I think that this is the end of the world? No, this is not the end of the world. Come on. This thing is not the end of the world. So don't lose your mind. Don't get scared. We're not fear-mongering here. We're only looking at, we're trying to suss out what the most rational, likely scenario is. Now, again, I'm going to stress, too, that this is a lot of hype because we don't know exactly what's going on here. And the mere fact that there's a whole bunch of different claims about how many people are sick, what the causes are from, quote, experts, I don't really know. Now, I'm not saying there's nobody that knows, but we look at Italy, we see the situation where they were not prepared for the overwhelming number of elderly people that came to the hospitals. There was a shortage of the respirators and this kind of stuff. This is also taking place during a bad flu season, right? There was just a news article yesterday saying this is one of the worst flu seasons. Are there people being diagnosed with both? Now, I've had pneumonia, okay, 2016. It was awful, okay? You know the difference between flu and pneumonia. I guarantee you that. Big difference, okay? Because when you've got pneumonia, there's stages to it. There's the color of your phlegm changes, and you know the stage of the pneumonia based on the color of the phlegm, the green and brown. The brown is when it's blood and all this stuff. And when you got pneumonia, you've got 104 or 5 degree fever that doesn't break. It is awful. It is the worst. You feel like you're dying. I had pneumonia again, like 4 years ago. Oh, it was the worst I've ever been sick, I think, that I can recall. Now, I got a antibiotic inoculation, and it saved my life. Does that mean that I would immediately rush into? I'm not giving anybody any medical advice. You got to make those decisions. But in this situation, see, not all stabbies are the same. Some stabbies can be good, but in this situation, I'm not gonna tell you what you need to do with the stabbies, except that I would not personally take an immediately rushed stabby. If I had pneumonia, which I did, I would get an antibiotic stabby. And that's what I got. And it worked. So I am not telling you what you should or should not do on that. because I don't know what is the whole situation here with the specifics. That's why I'm going to tell you what the news says. You make your decision on that, and then I'm going to step back and give you the long-term analysis. But again, nobody's going to get, if you got the flu, you're not going to get a stabby for pneumonia because you know what the flu is. We all know what the flu is. Not everybody's had pneumonia. I will say this too. I got pneumonia from traveling to Boulder to film the TV show that we did. And I was vaping and I was smoking tobacco at the time. And I probably got it at the airport. Okay. Now that's different though. I mean, if you have the flu, you would know. It's different. Way different. Now, initially it might seem the same. Like you might start feeling achy and bad and coughing. So you might think initially, oh, I've got flu or no. But when it develops into pneumonia, you know. I promise you, you know. Never coughed up brown on the flu, right? And the flu doesn't typically, unless you get it really bad, you don't feel like you're about to die. Like, I'm about to die. So getting pneumonia helped me get back in church. So that was a good, chastisements come to get your ass back in church, boy. All right, so back to the list here. Cruise ships, interesting piece of data. I don't know how to fit that in. We'll put this over here in the odd fact stack. We covered Event 2001. We covered Davos World Economic Forum. They've obviously been pushing for all this kind of technocratic stuff for a long time. Yang coming out saying, oh, yang gang, $1,000 on my wedding ring. Yang gang. Give me a break, dude. CEO stepping down. Now, there's two narratives about this. I'm not going to talk about that Q stuff. The two narratives about the CEO stepping down. One was, we had 10, 11 of these big CEOs stepping down like Gil Bates because they're rushing to the bunkers. Now, The Guardian put out another article, which they put out these articles every 6 months, just about, if you've followed this for a long time, of the elite rushing to the bunkers. Now, the elite do have bunkers, okay? So that is true. Do I know that the CEOs rushed off to the bunkers because of this? No, I don't know. So The Guardian has reported on this, and you can make of that what you will. Right? Again, we're just looking at all the data points that we have for all of this madness, which I have followed intently since January. Elite rushing off to the bunkers. Let's see what this says. So here's the Guardian report from, what was this, last week, I think. Super rich, jet off to disaster bunkers amid this. So now, does that mean that every one of the top elite is doing this? I don't necessarily think so. Maybe. Again, there are classes of the elite. And by the way, where people stash money is actually partly a sign of what level of elite that you are. I've heard this, people make this analysis, that if you put your money in, I don't know, Caymans or something, I forget what the exact, then you're like the tens and hundreds of millions, and then when you're in the billions, you're I don't know. Maybe that's true, but point being is that there are layers to this kind of elite stuff, right? So we got people who are, beyond the $1 billion, dude, whoa. There's people beyond that. Oh, come on. I don't know how much. Like, people ask that question, how much do the families really have? I don't know. I couldn't tell you that, because how do you calculate the wealth of the Vatican? Like, how do you put dollars on all that artwork? And I don't know. Anyway, regardless, self-isolation for some becomes the world's richest means. Is this part of the social engineering? Right? Is this put out to make you think, oh, we got to run to the hills? It's part of the hype, or are the CEOs really hunkered in the bunker hunkers? I don't know. It says, like hundreds of thousands of people across the world, the elite are preparing to self-isolate. They stocked up with hand sanitizers. Chartering their private jets, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't say who. Who are these billionaires? Let's see, one billionaire, Ken Langone, co-founder of Home Depot, 84-year-old billionaire. He says, what I've been telling people is be smarter than... Wait. What I've been told by people who are smarter than me is in diseases, as of right now, it is as bad as a flu. But, so where's all the billionaires? This is kind of a sensationalist title, isn't it? Let's see. Here we go. Tidwell said other rich clients. Okay, so I don't guess he names his clients. So they interview the bunker dude or whatever. The private jets. Oh, yeah. We're flying rich people. I guess they don't name who. Anyway, you can go read that Guardian article. But the Guardian has put that article, every 6 months they put that article out about the elite in the bunkers. I've been seeing that since 2003, right? Make of that what you will. I'm sure the elite, I mean, if you had $1 billion, wouldn't you have a bunker? Probably. Yeah, why not? I mean, you could buy anything you want. So I don't have any exact information on why every CEO is stepping down. It's not every CEO. I'm sorry, I don't buy the white hat QAnon thing that we're getting them. They're all being rounded up. It's all a cover for the spec op teams to go in and get their adrenochrome, and they're going to taint the adrenochrome because the black ops teams are doing it. The secret MAGA code. I got my boomerang. Yeah, come on. Give me a break, dude. You don't know what a limited hangout is? Come on. So let's see. What's next? Oh, one of the other documents. So New York Times a couple days ago was calling attention to this to make it look like Trump. Now, see, I don't really care about, I don't follow, as you guys know, we don't really follow or care about the political theater every day. But this is very interesting. Oh, now it's going to do that stupid freaking make you subscribe stuff. So anyway, it's not going to let me pull up the article because, but you can find other articles that discuss this. So Crimson Contagion, another series of exercises that were run. It's in the New York Times, but you have to have a subscription to pull it up. Let's see. In 2019, Trump administration held the simulation. It had remarkable accuracy. We never knew. Nobody had any idea. New York Times reported the war game was a simulated scenario where respiratory virus was called Crimson Contagion. It even mentioned Chan spreading to Merca. Draft report from the exercise obtained and published by the Times sounded alarms. Blah, 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 blah. So how many dude, you know how often the government runs exercises, right? And we saw there were military exercises, according to the Military Times, being done by NATO. Troops were deployed. And then, bring them back pretty quick here. Once this started happening, right? According to Military Times. Exercises run all the time. Okay, so let's calm down with like the patriotard stuff. I'm not calling everybody patriotard, but I mean, how long have they been rolling out the FEMA coffins crap? Okay, that's been going around since the early 2000s. All right, there could be, but I'm not gonna believe when I first see the bullshit of this patriot stuff of the coffins, they're rolling out the thousands and millions of coffins. If you've seen that since 2003, I mean, come on. But the Wall Street Journal yesterday did report that it is now time to roll out the military's involvement in all of these areas, including the commandeering of the hotels, stadiums, and we have seen that. Again, that's all public news now. We've seen then multiple examples of exercises and dry runs that were run. Let's see, what was... another angle too we need to mention before I forget. And I'm seeing people say, is it socialism? It's not socialism. It is socialism. It's not socialism. We still got a free market. There's not a hard and fast definition of social. I mean, there is in a sense, but you can have a hybrid system. Okay. This is fooling people. China is a hybrid system. Okay. So you can have a system that has, I'm not saying this is good. I'm saying that you can have a capitalist slash market slash socialist slash public-private partnership system slash fascist system. You can have a mix. And that's really what we have in the modern world is a mix. We don't have like one single, because all these people, we're going to get communism. We're going to get the Marxists taking over. The KGB and the Marxists don't run the Fortune 500. Now, however, if you listen to the TED Talk, Gil Bates's TED Talk from April 3rd, 2015, that was a pretty sober TED Talk, was it not? Now, I'm not talking about the older TED Talks with his formula. And if you have seen that one, you know what I'm talking about. I think that's being scrubbed from the internet, at least in some places. I'm sure it can be found, but I've heard it's being scrubbed. I don't know if that's true, but that's where he talks about getting the numbers down. And you know what he's talking about. Duh. There's only hundreds of books on this. I had some guy arguing, that's not what he means. That's not what he means. Oh, yeah, he only says what he means in 100 other places. But here, that's not what he means. Give me a break. Get out of here, dude. So in that TED Talk, he says, we're going to have a more economically fair world. Billionaire telling you that he's going to bring a fair, socialized economy. Really? Really? A billionaire telling me that he's going to make the world more fair. This just brings to mind everything we've ever talked about here, which is that socialism and Marxism in the modern formulations are 100% tools of the richest capitalists. Nobody can seem to figure this out. Oh, what are you talking about? They cannot figure this out. Even though I read you the books of all the richest elitist people, and they say that, people can't figure it out. I can't figure it out. How would David Rockefeller like communism? It don't make no sense. It don't make any sense. You must be a KGB. You're a communist. That's literally the stuff that I deal with every day, even though I read you 40 plus of the most powerful people's books. David Rockefeller has a whole chapter in his memoirs about going to China and setting up Chase Bank in communist China. Right? He's written entire New York Times editorials about how awesome Mao is. So the Chinese century, China is not the enemy in the long run of America. China is the model for where things are going to go. Does that mean that I think that China did all this? No, I do not. Did the CIA do it all? No, this kind of stuff is planned at a higher level than that. Okay, it's not some CIA operative running around somewhere who did all this. Right? This is stuff that's planned at high level white paper think tank, CEO, NGO, that level. Okay, that's where you get this kind of planning for this kind of stuff. The exercises that are planned out, high level generals, high level people in like Rand Corporation type people. Okay, that's where this kind of stuff's planned out. Who planned the 20th century? The Rand Corporation. Who planned and ran the entire Cold War? The Rand Corporation. Okay, that's the level I'm talking about. And I've covered the authorized history of the Rand Corporation. Alex Abea's book. I've covered the history of DARPA. Annie Jacobson's book. Okay. We've covered David Rockefeller's memoirs. We've covered the history of the CFR from their historian, Dr. Carol Quigley. And 37, 38 plus more books. Now, it's funny because, so I learned my psych, I'm not, well, you're not scared, you're not freaking out. Now, I learned all this stuff in the late 90s, okay? And I had my patriotard phase of the not being that sophisticated and thinking, oh, the United Nations and Marxists are going to take over. That's a really simplistic, John Birch type stuff, which is not the full picture here. Okay. But the point is that my psyche a long time ago, because I lived through Y2K. Okay. So I lived through an older, super hyped thing that turned into nothing. All the computers are not timed to roll over to 2001, and all the computers are going to roll over to 1900, and it's going to be bedlam, and absolutely nothing happened. It was like weird, but at the time, it was the end of the world, and there was fake news flying and apocalypse, and it was just ridiculous. And then like the next day, it was all gone. Right? Everybody forgot about it within a week, and it was a huge joke, right? Y2K was like this massive joke. Now, I don't think this is Y2K. I'm not saying that. Okay, so this is obviously they are really calling for big stuff here, right? Big changes. That's the big point here. I lived through the 9 event, and this is like the 9 event in slow motion, right? Because if you were there, everybody remembers where they were and what they were doing at the day of the 9 event. I was mixing paint at the paint store. I was 19, 20. 21. I was at work, and I was listening to the radio. And that, how dare you interrupt my Hootie and the Blowfish for this news report? I'm kidding. I don't like Hootie and the Blowfish, but my local radio, that's all they played. Like Hootie on repeat. Like, oh my hair, let her cry. And then breaking news. So then everybody that was, so the events of that day, it was just like, boom, 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 boom. Every hour there was like a big event, right? And everybody's like, what is going on? Under attack, America, under attack, America. Right, so, well, we're under attack. And then, like, you know, there was obviously aftermath, you know, the next few days. I'm not saying it was all one day, but I'm saying like the woe was all, you know, that day. And then it kind of like trailed off. But what was the result of that event? Well, it changed America. It changed attitudes. It changed America's self-perception. It changed the notions of civil liberties, Constitution. I'm not like a huge Constitution person. I don't really care about that stuff. But I'm just giving you my objective, factual analysis of what did happen. We did undergo a change in the way that liberties, civil liberties, tracking, surveillance, all these different programs were put into place related to DARPA and that kind of stuff. And so everything changed in that regard, in the way that we viewed speech. But it didn't really have a big day-to-day effect. And it because the internet wasn't omnipresent yet, you see. So I don't think nobody in 2001 exactly knew how prevalent the internet was going to be, because we weren't like, you know, going to the internet every day to read conspiracy stuff. Maybe some people did, because there were, you know, some of the earliest stuff on the internet was, you know, conspirafoil related material. So some people did, but the average person was not woke at all. I mean, the only reason I got woke was because I went to a Bible. I'm saying woke in the true sense. The seeds of being woke was I started reading these books on cults and New Age and the United Nations and that kind of stuff at a local bookstore. So this is 97, 98. I started reading about that stuff. So I was woke to that. And then I first heard about technocracy in 1997, 98. I read a couple books about the big tech companies and what they had planned. Now, at the time, it was very sensational. And I was overly sensational in the, you know, my approach. Because when you first learn this stuff, you're like, oh, shit, dude. You get like, you know, there's the phases that you go through, like the grieving stages. Like you're like, whoa. And then you're like freaked out. And then you're scared. And then you're depressed. And then you kind of, you get acclimatized to it. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's natural. I'm just saying that when you do learn these things, they become less of a shocker to you. And you start to realize how the world really works, right? So most people don't figure this out. Even with all this stuff going on, I think most people are still probably not going to figure this out. All you guys, though, glad to see you all here. It's my biggest live audience, except for like Stefan Molyneux. Welcome, everybody. Be sure and smash a like and share it if you feel so inclined. We'll get to those super chats here in a little bit, but we're still working through our analysis of the data. Anyway, point being is that, we've talked about it for a long time, and this is what led me. So I was on radio in 2007. I went on a show. I talked about what I thought was coming, and I laid out a scenario as well. I said I thought that but that was when I was beginning to study film and how propaganda is put in film, about 2007. And so I talked about I Am Legend, right? And in I Am Legend, we have this similar type of scenario. I said, I think this is the scenario that they would go with. I have those clips still. I can pull. I'm a little worried, nervous about putting those clips up. I didn't have any inside information. I was just going by the kind of film propaganda. If you go to my Twitter, you'll see that I wrote an essay in 2011 when Contagion came out, where I said that this is what they're going to do. So again, no inside information, just simply on the basis of what I saw was the preparation and conditioning in pop fiction and media. Now, obviously, everybody has seen Dean Koontz's stuff. The Dean Koontz stuff comes out. Somebody was saying, "You got schizophrenia, dude." Like, what does that have to do with schizophrenia? So I have schizophrenia. I wrote a master's thesis on prediction and propaganda in film with schizophrenia. Come on, dude, give me a break. It's not schizophrenia to realize. Have you ever seen 3 Days of the Condor? Hello, go watch that movie. Whole movie about this topic. Ever seen Argo? Right? Go watch Argo. Ever since the turn of the century, it's been normative to include these kinds of real stories in fiction. If you go back to the history of British fiction, British intelligence had the Official Secrets Act. They were very strict about what you could and couldn't say. So if you wanted to put these kinds of stories out, you'd have to put it in fiction. Right? Graham Greene did this in his novels. He would write about fake flags and this kind of stuff in his novels. He would write about anarchist groups being used, this kind of stuff. Well, guess what? Ian Fleming did the same thing. So I know a lot about this. I've written extensively about this. I have 2 books on this. Okay, I'm not a schizophrenic. I may act crazy, but that's just me. I'm a wild and crazy guy. Anyway, point being is that this is a tactic that has been known for a long time. Plato did this. Virgil did this, right? The Aeneid is a state-funded propaganda myth for the Roman Empire. Edmund Spenser wrote The Faerie Queene, which is a state-funded myth for the British Empire. Okay? Fiction has always included, I'm not saying all fiction is a big state conspiracy. I'm just talking about one layer of reality here. Every time I say something, people take it and then they run with it and go crazy. Say something I didn't say. Anyway, so we have to understand that's why fiction is relevant to look at in these scenarios, okay? We're not going to take fiction narratives and then import that into reality and say that because it was in a fiction narrative, therefore it will be real. That would be stupid. It's a non sequitur. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that when we look at films, Outbreak, it's a movie made with consultation by the military. And does that mean that it's a conspiracy movie that predicts the future? Not necessarily, right? Again, I'm more nuanced than that. And I've been wrong, okay? So I've made mistakes in the past. I've learned how to get better in my analysis of these types of things. But it is relevant to look at films. So The Purge comes to mind here. I've got my... well, actually, before we get to the movies, let's get to a few more of the points. So now we saw those GOP slime balls dumping their stocks on the basis of what appear to be the private meetings that they had. And then, we just did it on the basis of news stories. Oh, really? Really? Remember the put options before the 9 event? I'm not saying that it's a one-to-one correspondence between the put options before the 9 event and the stuff with these GOP senators. But it's similar kind of. Okay, so you guys knew something. Come on here. Trillions? What? We want to get to these points. Trillions. First it was 3 trillion, and today Steve Mnuchin says 11 trillion. And if you saw Rush's stream yesterday, he played the clip of Bernanke saying that we put the numbers into a computer and we add a 0. Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've done multiple talks, essays on the history of the Federal Reserve, the history of the Bank for International Settlements. I've talked about this for a long time, right? When did I learn about the Federal Reserve? 2005. Learned about the Fed, started watching Fed documentaries about fractional reserve banking. And then you learn about shadow banking, flash trades, watching all this kind of stuff. Oh, they just add zeros. Oh, we can just pump liquidity into the market. We just throw money into the market. And that's part of the reason, I'm not saying it's the whole reason, that's part of the reason why the state officials are saying, oh, we got the worst. It's like competition. We got a zillion people have got it. Give me that cash, dog. Pump $1 zillion dollars into my state because we got a zillion cases. Again, I'm not saying that people aren't sick. I'm not saying that there's not things happening. I'm just saying that this is one layer angle to what's happening that we need to understand. A lot of money is going to be allocated in these bailouts. And even Trump, I may need a bailout, right? What? Where's my bailout? I paid, so I have a middle class income. I paid exorbitant amounts of taxes last year. Where is my bailout? Now, I'm not a Bernie Sanders socialist. Okay, but I mean, we all know that these bailouts, just like 2008 with the housing crash, the bailouts are going to go to select people. Let's not forget that angle, right? But then you get like the trader types. They'll be like, oh, it's all just money. No, I'm sorry, Wall Street trader. Sorry, Robert Taylor. Things go a lot higher than just you. There are big, big, big people involved in what's happening. This is not the end of the world. I'm sorry. There are people acting like, this is it, folks. We're dead. It's not the end of the world. I do think a lot of people are thinking, again, my opinion, I do think that when this subsides after our 2-week lockdown or month or however many weeks they try to extend this, I suspect there probably will be a kind of economic boom, but don't be fooled. And even if you get your 2000 Trump bucks, your Yang bucks, don't be roped into that, because that's going to fool you into thinking that, oh, now we're going to have this technocratic future where we're going to get allocated our government check every week. That's to rope you into the technocracy. And I'm sorry, but most people are going to fall for this. Okay, most people are going to, all these dumb right wingers that jumping on Yang, thinking that he's going to give you $1,000 a month. Are you that dumb? Are you serious? You're that dumb that this is not for technocracy? These people have no long-sighted analysis. I mean, I'm giving you what 40 plus of the top elite have written in the last 100 years. I guarantee you 99% of these dumb right wingers who went YOLO and want their $1,000 a month, they haven't read any of this stuff. And that's why they don't listen to me. They don't listen to what I talk about. They just, say I'm crazy. What if I'm crazy? How did I write an essay in 2011 outlining this kind of scenario that we see now? Oh, you're just lucky guess. A lucky guess? It's not a lucky guess. I've spent years. I did grad work on this stuff. Come on. Anyway, so we got Crimson Contagion. Trump says, "Oh, we didn't know about that. We didn't know. We had no idea." Multiple exercises. I mean, come on. Now maybe Trump himself wasn't told every one of these. I mean, who could even keep up with all of these exercises? I mean, they run like constant. Remember Jade Helm? Now, Jade Helm, as we said, we were correct. There at the time, people were saying, "Oh, Jade Helm's end of the world." Oh, no, it's not. And we said this is a bunch of nothing. It's a nothing burger. And who was right? We were. Not all of the fear-mongering, fear prawn people. We were right about Jade Helm. We said it was intentionally made public to test responses. Now, Mr. Gil Bates, in his 2015 talk, he said Rebola, that Rebola event, the Rebola event was a dry run. I think he used the word dry run, something like that. If you listen to his 2015 talk. A dry run? That's what I said Jade Helm was. Preparation. Not so much about setting up some continuity of government. Continuity of government's been there forever, like all the way back to like the wartime, right? But the COG stuff, now you'll notice is not just about North America. It's the COG stuff is global. And the international bodies want more control out of this. This is key. This is an underlying factor in every one of the white papers, every one of the exercises, and every one of the talks. Is all the international bodies need more power, more regulatory power, more coordination, more access to data than ever before, and in any of the local settings. That's come up in every one of these events. That's key to watch for. Let's see. We did the bailouts. We did that. We did the medicine. So who was it? It was Atali, Kessler, Copra, David Rockefeller, Russell, at least 5, and one more. I'm forgetting. Oh, Dr. Day, 6. At least 6 specifically wrote extensively about how medicine and would be the crucial linchpin roadway into this whole new world. A whole new world. I cannot believe that they went from 3 trillion to 11 trillion today. But remember, it's like we were talking about with Chris a few years ago. Chris did a funny episode where he was like, how do they even calculate these numbers? And then he was like, maybe they just like type it in. Like they just say it out. And I'm like, maybe that is, yeah. Like we think that there's like experts over here, like in a room full of like papers flying everywhere and tabulations are going and giant computers and spitting out stuff. And I'm sure there are, but it's entirely possible that like Bernanke was like, we just add a number. We just add a 0. Right. So anyway, thank you guys for the support. If you would, be sure and hit like and share. Much appreciated for those questions. We will answer those here in a moment. So we did the medical. Nancy Banks's book. Don't forget Nancy Banks's book. We did the constitutional questions here. Let's see. So let's talk about this other angle that some people are talking about, which is the 5G. It is possible. I don't totally negate this. We did a talk many years ago about 5G. 5G comes up in Brzezinski's books back in the 70s. Not specifically, but the VLF, ELF, frequency manipulation. That's all very real. Is 5G totally being brought about to like cook everybody? I don't know. Possibly. It seems to be problematic in terms of like the distance as to how effective it is. So, I mean, it seems like they have to set these 5G transmitter, routers everywhere. It's like they're super strong in a small area, is what I understand. So I don't know how. I understand that that's part of how they want to be able to transmit and track and follow more data and more people more quickly. There's no question about that. But is it specifically intentionally to cook everybody? I think possibly to ramp up. There's many theories. Oh, it cooks the water in the body, and so it gives us cancer, and it gives microwaves everybody. I understand all that. I'm not saying that 5G is a good thing. I have watched I've seen the 5G stuff for years. I know about silent weapons for quiet wars. I know. I've read Michael Aquino's papers on ELF, VLF warfare. I've read all this stuff. I know that. So that's definitely a potential. And then people pointed out about the city and the cruise lines. Dana, our friend Dana, did a video on this. You can find her video, Dana Ashley. I'm not saying that that's wrong. It's an analysis. It's a perspective that we should keep in mind. But I also am not convinced that that everything we're being told is correct. So I just don't know. So if everything is if we look at the claims about the sickness, if the numbers are correct, and it is a lot of people getting this, and it's not viral or just viral, then 5G could be part of that. I have watched, again, yes, I know I've had 20 people send me the talk of the dude on Instagram. Yes, I've seen it. Is it both? Is it a binary thing? Yes, there are binary weapons where you have environmental factors combined with artificial factors that individuals are able to stimulate and agitate through frequencies. That's all real. I can give you, again, I've listed the papers. I can tell back in 1973, Brzezinski and Between Two Ages wrote about this. So that's possible. We will put that in the potential possible category. But I also don't want to necessarily at this point buy into the, everybody. I mean, the people that are saying the worst stuff, okay, California, Cuomo, how are we supposed to trust these guys? Oh, it's going to be, the damn zombie apocalypse, right? That's the way they're framing this. I'm sorry, I don't. I mean, maybe it is, but I don't. I'm fully justified in being skeptical of that as a source. Okay. So people are talking about socialized healthcare. Now, in theory, I don't have a problem with socialized healthcare. In theory, in terms of a healthy society that's functioning with a proper, better worldview. Okay, there's no perfect utopias. I realize that. And so you'll get the free market. People will say, "Oh, it's all socialized healthcare. That's a problem." And then the people on the socialized healthcare, they'll respond by saying, "Oh, look at all the problems that you have in your market economy healthcare." I'm not interested in either one of these two because the socialized healthcare is run by the same eugenics people that run the free market healthcare in America, the whole Rockefeller Medical Center. So they're both, I don't want either one of them. They're both garbage. Does that mean that they don't heal people? Well, guess what? The elite, the wealthiest people on the planet, they have private doctors that they fly to in other countries who have treatments that we don't even know about. That's been confirmed in mainstream media multiple times over. So again, it's a stupid debate to... that's why, but does that mean that we will get socialized healthcare? They will probably take it in that direction. And this is not to give you good healthcare, and it's not even about whether socialized or privatized healthcare is better than the other. It's about getting a technocratic healthcare model that the elite have had planned for a long time. That's the key here. While you're down here debating football bullshit about private markets versus government, that's all football, sports ball bullshit. You are going to get the technocracy, whether you're a GOP or whether you're a Democrat or a socialist or whatever. I even made joke videos, obvious joke videos, and I had like boomer Bernie mom thinking that I was real. I mean, we're talking about some dumb people out here. It's sad. It's sad. All right. Have I covered all the main documents I wanted to touch on? We've gone for what? Almost 2 hours. I think we've hit on all the main stuff. Yes, Denmark passing laws about stabbies. And of course, Gil Bates saying that your stabbies, that comes up in here in the MIT article. The stabbies will be part of this. Now, am I telling you that if you get pneumonia, not to get a stabby? No. Because I got an antibiotic. The whole question is, what are you getting stabbied? It's not stabbies themselves. It's what's in there. Do you know? I made sure when I got mine that it was the antibiotic when I had pneumonia. Okay? So you make that decision based on what is in the stabby. It's not a question of, are all stabbies bad or all stabbies good? That's another false, stupid debate that people are having. Anyway, let's see. Have we hit on all the major points? Let's talk a little bit about the movies. That's relevant. I do think we're going to see a 2-week lockdown. That's my opinion. They may extend that lockdown beyond that. People are saying there ain't enough people to lock down. There's not going to be no lockdown. Really? You don't think they can lock the country down? I beg to differ, bro. So that's my opinion. based on the chatter and what looks to be what the government is signaling. I've watched all the press conferences. I've watched the different briefings. And what you'll notice is that things that are battered around, whispered about, in 2 or 3 days, they announce it. That seems to have been the pattern so far. Now, I'm not saying that's like an infallible guide, but what I've noticed and what I've said to all my friends is that, watch, tomorrow they'll announce this. Tomorrow they'll do this. Tomorrow, Monday, they'll do this. So I think that has been pretty accurate in my assessment so far. It does look like, I mean, we've already had them saying that, oh, yes, we're going to put the military involved in the supply chains, involved in taking over and commandeering the hospitals, the stadiums, and the was a general gave a press briefing about this, right? It was in the Military Times. It was in Wall Street Journal. So that's all mainstream news. It's not conspiracy theory. It's not martial law. It's law enforced by military marshals. Anyway, so that's pretty public right now. I'm not sure why people are debating this. It's publicly announced. And then we saw this curious Mike Pompeo. I don't know what to make of this, except that it does seem to resonate with a lot of the information that I've given tonight, where Pompeo says we're in the midst of an exercise. And then Trump says, "You should have told us that before." I don't know what that means. Unless it means that what's being rolled out is like an exercise, like Event 2ONE. Let's see, what did I want to mention about the movies? All the news reports of 33. That's curious. I'm not gonna shout out to Sam Tripoli over at Tinfoil Hat, who pointed this out. You're schizophrenic. Look, he's schizophrenic because he's noticing numbers. Well, everybody who studies math notices numbers. Is every mathematician schizophrenic? 33, 33, 33, 33, 33, 33, 33, 33. That is curious. I'm not going to tell you what that means. You make up your own mind about that. I just think it's bizarre. Does it mean that everything is not real? No. That's dumb. Of course not. This is March 3. Ides of March. That's interesting. Let's see. There was another movie. So The Purge had the opening credits 2013, show March 21st, 2020. In the first Purge, which I did watch the other night, it says the UK announces lockdown measures, and I think Boris said that they would invoke the wartime powers. Trump, I think, hasn't Trump mentioned the wartime powers, or maybe not, or did he? I think the Department of Justice requested the wartime special powers for this kind of stuff. DOJ, that was mentioned in the mainstream news. You guys in the chat can let me know if wartime was mentioned by any of our leaders, but regardless, they don't have to mention that stuff. Let's see, were there any other film? Now, there's a lot of movies that are relevant. Obviously, the most relevant to our situation is Contagion. Again, go see my analysis that I did at the top of my Twitter, or you can go to my Instagram, where if you go back a few days, I'll put my Instagram in the chat right now. You go back a few days, and you'll see my written screenshot. I just screenshotted my 2011 analysis of Contagion on my Instagram. Follow me there. Contagion is the most relevant with the location of the event, the social distancing. We even have the conspiracy. Isn't Jude Law the conspiracy guy in that? Let's see what I wrote in my analysis. Let me pull that up. I talked about how it was a shitty movie. So in the film, it's SARS. We saw an by the way, I read The Passage, which they recently made into a show. I read The Passage back when it came out, and they made this into a show with Zach from Saved by the Bell. It was bizarre. The movie's not that good. Show's not that good. The book is actually okay for a Stephen King The Stand style analysis. I did analysis of The Stand the other night. You can go watch my other live stream where I did The Stand. Jude Law is the conspiracy guy. He's the loon blogger. But guess what? He's a money-grubbing hedge fund guy who shorts the market on the basis of this stuff. So what the GOP and the slimeball traders do, the movie puts upon the conspiracy bloggers who call them out. Okay. Yeah, sure. There's a weird esoteric element where they reference the Chinese zodiac. I think the scorpion, comes up in this. I'm not going to make too much of that, except that it is out of the Chan. So we then see problems on Wall Street, problems in the stock market, the Dow dropping. We see the underground base, the DUMBs. We see even fluoride in the water being mentioned. We see the black helicopters all in this film. I think this is a very much a heavily propaganda-based film, especially when we consider that Sanjay Gupta was saying basically what's in the movie. Now, I can't see the third. So the third page, I say that we know what the elite have in mind for Depop. And I said that we know that this is in the deck. This card is in the decks, and it's only a matter of time before we see this kind of a body odor scenario. So there you go, 2011. And where's all the accusations? We had some YouTubers, 3 weeks ago, calling me a crazed tinfoil hatter. Big YouTuber guy. Well, where's all that now? I'm not hearing that accusation of calling me a crazed conspiracy person now, am I? All right, so I don't see any. So V for Vendetta. Now, you might think that V for Vendetta is just about the staged sort of bio thing. And in that movie, it's a fake flag. But when I did my analysis of V for Vendetta, I talked about dialectics because V initiates Evie into Satanism in the comic. So it's a dialectical manipulation film more than it is some kind of like, oh, they're going to expose the elite with this movie. Yeah, right. Sure. But I do have an extensive V for Vendetta analysis if you want to read that. We talked about The Purge. We talked about the Hollywood people. We talked about Contagion, The Stand. I still have not watched Andromeda Strain. I have watched it a long time ago. I fell asleep. So, Michael Crichton, you put me to sleep, dog. But that's okay. Children of Men, I think, is relevant because it doesn't mention the body odor release, but it does mention something that happened to make people sterile, which we're not in a situation of that yet, but they are discussing the voluntary sterilization programs, which Bertrand Russell said was a good idea a long time ago. I'm told I need to watch the 1980 movie Virus. May do that. Aaron and Melissa, everybody check out Aaron and Melissa's videos that they put out. Fear is a Mind Killer. We have all the social distancing in THX 1138. Go watch THX 1138, which Tristan and I did an analysis of, which came out really good. I think that was one of our better film analyses. And all of what you see in THX also relates to this. I mean, it's like all the dystopian movies, kind of relate to this. And we've been prepped with all of this post-apocalypse, all of this stuff. It's not just money. It's also part of where society needs to go in the mindset of the elite. Okay, so that's the majority of my notes. I wanted to keep this under 2 hours. We can definitely do more analyses as more information comes out. Again, trying to stick to what is the public mainstream information. So there you go. So there's all the narratives. There's the worst case scenario, which the media has reported on, which the governors seem to hype up. I think that's exaggerated. There's the history of it being a body odor release narrative, which is plausible given some of the arrests which has been scrubbed, and they're trying to Snopes is fact-checking that, even though the BBC still says that Dr. L was related to the lab in Chan. And we covered the technocrat. So the summary crux of this is that this is ultimately really not about a CV, Carunka. It's about the technocratic plan. Everything that we have been telling you, me, Aaron, and Melissa, have been talking about. Tristan, I did an interview with Jim Bob yesterday. We talked about this for about 30 minutes. That's marching forward. And the UBI fits into it. The big data fits into it. The market crash fits into it. The consolidation after the market issues fit into that. The monopoly moves. Let's not forget the coordination between certain companies, the select companies, the Walmarts and the Costco's and big toilet paper. This is a big this is scam by Big TP. I say that tongue in cheek. Big toilet paper has made a lot of money from this, haven't they? As have some other big companies. All right. So, and let's not forget that Gil Bates tied this to, what else did he mention? Climate. So, John sent me an article from a while back about how this would be tied to climate. And guess what? Gil Bates already in his 2015 TED Talk tied it to climate. So they were already saying that climate change would be a important factor in future panicdemics. Like still Jim Bob's term there, panicdemic. So remember that when wartime powers are invoked and the changes that are made, as many of the global elite have said, we can get more done in wartime than you can in so-called peacetime. You can get like a zillion things done by the assumption of powers. And we just saw today heads of state in other countries are actually declaring dictatorial powers. So now, in theory, I don't have a problem because I'm not a libertarian free market person. I don't have a problem with a centralized state that does make decisions to do things in the interest of their group, their state. However, that's not really the real world. We don't live in this idealized system of a centralized state that can do all that. We live in the real world, the modern world, which is being squeezed into a technocratic state. And I think that elite is manipulating different countries to see it as, oh, you let loose this body odor weapon. No, you let loose this body odor weapon. And there's people who legitimately believe in these countries that both sides let loose the body odor. And then it's hyped. But if you watched X-Men First Class, remember X-Men First Class? You might say, why are you, that's not relevant. Yes, it is. Actually, that movie is relevant to this because who was behind, it's not body odor weapons in that. It's the nukies, right? Who was manipulating the nukies between the U.S. and the Soviets? There was a deeper group who was playing the two nation states off against one another. There is a deeper group who plays nation states off against one another. It's gone on for a long time. And people can't figure that out, so they get lost in the haze of this country versus that country. Now, does that mean that there's nothing real about this country versus that country? No, there are world wars, and they are real. But they are engineered in the sense that there are higher groups. Again, go listen to my talk on the Rand Corporation. Go listen to my countless dozens of talks on the global elite technocrats. And they get way more out of this than even any private company. Right? Even if a private company made a lot of money off of this, right? You think that a senator making $1 million off of dumping stocks is like, that's nothing. I mean, I'm not saying it's right. I mean, obviously, this should be illegal, and that's a total scumbag move. But what I'm saying is that this goes way deeper than that kind of $1 million senator stuff. And if you don't realize that, if you don't know that, then I mean, I don't know what to tell you. But be sure and go listen to, if you want more information on the approach that I'm giving you here, go watch my Globalism Books Talks, which gives you the broader context for the events, right? So people get caught up in the hype of the event and what's the news saying today about, oh, this place did lockdown, and oh, what are they doing over here? And step back and look at the big scale, because all the fluster of the here and the now is what gets people to fear react and accept things that might not be the wisest in the long run. Anyway, so let's do some super chats. So this is my overall analysis. Again, it doesn't necessarily tell you, oh, I know for sure the whole, because anybody who's telling you that they know every little sure detail is lying to you, because I talk to a lot of smart people, and I talk to a lot of smart people who have varying views. I talk to a lot of smart people in different areas of life, people who do intelligence analysis, people who are in churches, who do theology, people in academia, people in the private sector, business people, okay? I have a lot of people I can talk to, and in my Discord, we have people all over the world. We can ask people in Discord, varying age groups, what's happening in your country, what's happening over here, right? So we have our own kind of little intelligence network, so to speak, that's just the people that follow my work and my analysis. So I have access to a lot of people, and a lot of people have had different analyses, but one thing we've all agreed on is the overall usage for the most powerful groups, the technocratic type groups. So that's where we're all agreed that this is a unified plan. And so yes, ID 2020, I know about all of it, and it all relates to this, and that's all in that MIT article. We're not going back to normal. All right, so again, I will answer the super chats in the safest way possible, because today we are safe snowflakes. Wind Eater $4.99. Do I grandfather option if my account automatically renewed and the site is telling me to register again? Yes. Just use the grandfather login. Gen Z Philosophy $1.99. Are any stabbies worth it? Again, I'm going to tell you my personal experience when I had pneumonia and I got a antibiotic stabby. Okay. That was my personal experience. I'm not telling you what to do in any way about your medical decisions, but personally, I would not take stabbies that I didn't know what was in there, and I don't do stabbies like throughout the year. Right? So the only time I've had a stabby that I know of was when I got pneumonia, and it was an antibiotic, and I was like feeling like I was going to die. Amans Patrie, $5. Could Carunka cripple the world order and neoliberalism? People are saying this. I don't think so. I think that neoliberalism is the model of corporate fascism, corporate control. That's the world government that we're pretty much under. People are, the Marxists are taking over. The Marxists aren't taking over, dummies. So we are already under a new neoliberal order, and that, again, the richest people run and control and love socialism and communism. That's the key here. So is it going to get rid of neoliberalism? No. Neoliberal order loves this because they get to go to Trump and say, partner with us. We will have Walmart and, the biggest companies will have a special public-private partnership, and we will corner the market during this entire... No, that's not true at all. I don't know who would think. Maybe some Marxists would think that this is going to cripple. It's not going to hurt global... Again, this is long-term. The elite, the technocrats, they don't care about neoliberalism and socialism and Marxism. They are beyond that. Those are old models. Do you not understand that what they say? All these people caught up in these 20th, 19th, 18th century philosophies of economics, that's going away. All of that is going away. You're not going to be having market debates. You're not going to have a market. That's all going away. That's the old model. I don't know why people can't grasp that. I keep telling people that, and they're like, conspiracy theories. Do I know when that's going to go away? No. I mean, that could continue for another 10, 20, 30 years. I don't know. But every one of these people says, we want, by 2050, all of that to go away. H.G. Wells even said, you're not even going to have a market, dummy. You're going to have a market. You're going to have a technocracy. And you will get allocated what you get. You're not going to go to Wall Street and bet. You're not going to have put options. You're not going to have your private whatevers. That's going away. Now, do I know when? No. They write you papers every day telling you it's all going away. It's all going away. You're going to live in a box coffin in a smart city above a Target, and Target and Walmart will allocate your rations. I'm not saying this is tomorrow. I'm talking about where the world is going. I don't know the date of when that is. I'm telling you, that's what they say. And in order to get into the city, to have that UBI and all that stuff, you're going to have to sign over everything. You might even have to say that you won't, that you'll get sterilized, right? Come to the smart city. You can have all the prawn you want. You can hump all the R2D2s you want. Bump uglies with R2D2 all night long, but get sterilized. And take all these drugs. Armand's $7. Tammy, again, if all of the top elite people, the most powerful people, write countless books saying, we want that world, don't you think they're serious about it? They are serious. They're not doing all this text. They're not doing DARPA and all this stuff because they are incompetent. I'm so tired of seeing the narrative that government is incompetent. Yeah, the government, local people and the people on the TV circus are incompetent, but the people who built the internet are not incompetent. They built the internet. They have 200 IQs and they want to radically depop. They're not incompetent. Okay? There are evil geniuses. There are Blofelds. Blofeld is real. And you're dumb if you don't realize that. I'm sorry, but you're dumb. That's why they think that it's okay, because most of you people they think are too dumb. And you can't even figure out how the world works. You'd rather watch sports ball than learn about the world. And so they think that you need to go away. And they say that in their books. Armand's $87. Thank you, Armand. Tammy Gross, new member. Thank you for joining. Welcome. You can access the that stuff in community tab. Tammy Gross, another $20. Thank you so much. Palmer Elric. Terrence McKenna told me that humans are a cancer on the planet and that the elites love you and just want to teach you a lesson. He's a loving luminary. Yes, all those same technocrats go to Burning Man and they trip balls and they lose their mind and they do interact with these entities. I'm not kidding you. Do you think that all the tech elite that go in there, they have a secret society? Go look that up at Burning Man. And they all trip balls and they experience the entities and the entities tell them what to do. That's all true now. That's all been admitted. I knew that a long time ago, not just because of what you heard on my show, but because they write books about it. And they write books about that. John C. Lilly, psychonaut who loved his dolphins, part of MK Ultra. He said, I was bathed in the light of Lucifer when I tripped. I went to the outer edges of the galaxy in my psychonaut journeys, and I was bathed in the light of the Godhead. He doesn't mean God. He means Lucifer. He says, when I came back, I learned that we can wipe people's minds with LSD and reprogram, and we can reorganize society to be a utopia. I'm not kidding, right? I've done LSD. I know what it's like. I can speak from experience. You can meet entities and they're not your friends. They will pretend to be your friends, but they're not your friends. G-Dub, $20. The WHO and other government hid the reality of this. Maybe. Maybe. There is that analysis that this was intended to come. You can make that decision based on the information that is in the public sphere that we covered today. People who saw the videos, I saw all those videos and followed the experts. Yeah, but see, how do we know to follow experts? They knew that what was going on in February. I watched it since January. They live. Could be. That is an analysis that people are giving. John Goras, $5. Can you Can you do some Hans and Franz for the pumping up? Yes, everybody. I don't know why people. So I put that video up of me doing Arnold. If you haven't seen Arnold in the bathtub, I mean, it's not a bath. Maybe it is a bathtub. I don't know. But when he was in his hot tub, and then I did a Twitter video making fun of that. And then people actually thought that I was a celebrity being serious, doing that as a PSA, and then singing Imagine from my bathtub. I'm not kidding. I got multiple comments of people saying that they thought I was a celebrity who was literally honestly doing that. Wow. I mean, just the mindset of some people is like, really? And then like the virtue, the worst part of this has been the virtue signaling people who are like, they think that this time frame, this situation is the time for them to talk about how virtuous they are and to call everybody else out. And how dare you make a joke? Really? Come on. Give me a break. There is the Arnold video where, and by the way, watch the original Arnold video because it's just comedic. I mean, we got to have some gallows humor, y'all. We got to laugh at this kind of stuff. Here's the Arnold video in the hot tub telling you to stay at home and don't do anything. I mean, and he even does the stogie stuff, right? So there's Arnold, and then there's my video. All right, so let's move on. Jacob Cabay, $2. I just joined the stream. Did you talk about? Yes, I talked about event 20ONE. Gen Z 199. Can you say what stabbies are a suspect? I can't because I don't. I mean, just read what they say and you make the decision. But I don't get any. I mean, I got an antibiotic, so that's my decision. Nicodemus the Pharisee, $2. What happens when Carunka is on the Eucharist? Go watch David's video. The Eucharist cannot transmit disease. So David will show you from the Church Fathers what the Orthodox view of that is. David, the real Medrite, can the Eucharist transmit disease? Go watch that. Also, Father Josiah Trenum, he did a whole video on should we be afraid of the Eucharist during a pandemic, panicdemic, this kind of stuff. Quiet Convert, $10. Thank you for these insights. Thank you. Much appreciated. I've tried to give the most balanced analysis that I could from the bird's eye perspective of the different narratives and theories, and the consensus is that mainly this aids the technocratic agenda. I think I'm totally correct about that. Nicodemus the Pharisee, $5. I read 100-year-old CT that eventually the economy would be crashed and we would go back to feudalism. Yes, they actually do mention the feudal model. Exactly when or how a crash would come or be, we don't really know. Is this the crash? Possible, but I don't think that this is the crash. I think that this will lead to maybe further similar types of things, but I don't think this is the economic crash. But again, just my opinion. We could see this going away after a 2 to 4 week lockdown. I do think that's going to happen, and then we could, in 5 months, we could forget about Carunka, and it would be some new future problem. Caps, if you remember, in the event 2001, 20ONE, they call it caps. So could there be some future? They've been saying that too, like, oh, well, when this goes away, just wait for the next thing that comes. So they're telegraphing that too. So that's entirely possible. And they could say, oh, it's mutated, and now there's the new, thing. And that's what I'll say on that. But you are correct that the elite a long time ago said that the existing system, and there is, I think, an internal impetus within the capitalist scheme, the monopoly capitalist scheme, to eat itself. That's partially true. And don't call me a Marxist when I say that, because I critique Marxism too. I'm neither one of those. But it won't be like a feudal system, like an actual king or some shit. Like, oh, why don't you support this if you're a monarchist? Because then you'll have a local lord or king. It's not going to be like that. It's a technocracy. It's living inside a bubble Walmart. That's what we're talking about here. with AI and R2D2s to bump your uglies with so that you don't reproduce. That's what we're talking about. All right, so I don't see any more super chats. If you would, be sure to like, share, subscribe. Thank you for following my content. And be sure to click the bell to get the notifications. And I hope you enjoyed my analysis. Hopefully it's helpful. I want to remind everybody not to fear, don't panic. It's a good idea at this time, if you don't have a Bible app, to get the Bible.is app and listen to Bible on audio. I've been doing that a lot lately. Get a prayer rope. If you're not Orthodox, become Orthodox. Find a local Orthodox church. Hopefully you can find one that's pretty solid. But it's time to start reading the Bible. And again, I'm not saying that, oh, it's the end of the world. I'm just saying that it's always a good time to read the Bible. But these kinds of things that come, regardless of how actually real the stats and numbers are on the carunka, these events are perceived by people to be the end of the world, blah, blah, blah. And so people get freaked out. We shouldn't be freaked out. I mean, I've been laughing and joking for most of this stuff. Doesn't mean we shouldn't have, time to pray and to be serious and to reflect. We should. Father Trenham had a good video on that. But at the same time, it's also like, it's not a time to be freaking out. Don't freak out. Use this time to begin to read the Bible. Draw close to God in this time. God sends us these kinds of things as periods to where we can repent. I'm actually glad that a lot of people are going to repent and become theists out of all this. Jay, would you consider writing a book that summarizes the technocratic? Yeah, actually, I mentioned to my publisher the other day that the entire Globalism Books Talks would actually be great for a book. So that is on the table. But thank you for that. Buy your wise for $9.99. Much appreciated. Yeah, I think that the globalism elite talks and the technocracy stuff would be a great book. Just because I've looked at a whole bunch of different sectors that there are some good books on that topic, right? That cover technocracy, but a lot of them have not looked at every area, right? So anyway, all right, thank you guys. I'm going to try also, I think maybe to do a shorter 20-minute video, because I was looking at the analytics and everybody's time span is mostly 20 minutes. Like, they can't handle more than 20 minutes. So I might try to do a quick stream summarizing my information. Not a stream, but a 20-minute video as well. But thank you, and stay tuned and don't get scared, and be safe. So everybody have